welcome back to Anyone Can Cook with Lauren. I am Lauren, and today we're going to be doing some fried mozzarella and a super quick and easy marinara sauce for dipping. So over here I have my low moisture mozzarella. Typically it comes in a block, so I just cut it into about 1/4 inch thick pieces. Then we have about a 1/4 cup of flour here, seasoned with salt and pepper. I find it's really important to season the flour that we're going to dip the cheese in first, because it kind of just gives it a little bit of flavor underneath, aside from it just being, plain flour under the breadcrumbs. I also have a 1/2 cup of plain breadcrumbs here, as well as a 1/2 cup of panko breadcrumbs mixed together. And then I have a 1/2 cup of milk. I also have an egg here. We're only going to put the yolk into the milk mixture. I find the egg white being in there makes it a little too gunky, a little too sticky, but the egg yolk is going to help bind everything together. I also have our seasonings here for our breadcrumbs, and we'll go over those in just a moment. But right now we're going to get our egg yolk into our milk. So a super easy way to do this is when you split the egg in half, you want to just be careful not to let the yolk fall out. And you can just carefully let the egg whites fall out of the shell. So you see you're left with a perfect little egg yolk in the shell here. And you can just move it back and forth to get the rest of the egg whites out. You don't have to use a spoon or a cup or anything like that. And then once you have your little egg yolk, just plop it right in. It's very important to wash your hands after handling raw eggs. All right, we're gonna take a fork here and we're just gonna whisk the yolk into the milk, just until it's pretty well mixed together. And we'll wanna keep this fork with us because this is gonna help us be able to move our cheese from our egg to our breadcrumbs back and forth. Okay, for our breadcrumbs here, I have salt and pepper, I have onion powder and garlic powder, and then I have basil and oregano. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna add about a 1/4 teaspoon of the onion powder. And you can always change this up as you make it and you find that you have different tastes as you go. And it's gonna be about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Also 1/4 teaspoon-ish of the garlic powder. I would say probably a 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon of both the oregano and the basil. That's probably more between a 1/4 and 1/8. But it really is to just taste however you want it. And then I would say also a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, or 1/2, depending on how much pepper you like. So as you cook more and more, you will find that you have different tastes for different things. And you can just adjust anything you make to how you like it. That's why I like cooking so much, because it's not as rigid as baking. If you mess things up in cooking, or if you want to change something in cooking, there's a lot less at stake than if you were, baking a cake and you left out, baking powder or baking soda. There's just a lot less at stake cooking. And it's a lot of fun to just experiment. So I like to mix breadcrumbs with my hands because it makes sure that those are nice and mixed together. And I can break up the panko crumbs just a little bit because sometimes there are bigger pieces. But that way everything's all evenly sifted and mixed together. And you will get a little bit crumbly here, so be warned. All right, so we're gonna start with dipping our cheese here into the flour. And you just want to shake off any excess flour here. You don't want it to get too gunky. So it's nice and coated. We're going to go ahead and dunk it in the egg, both sides. Okay. It can spatter, so be careful. Drip off any excess liquid. And then plop it into the breadcrumbs. So you're gonna wanna pat it down, get it really evenly coated. Because what we're going to do with these is we're going to double coat them, because that helps prevent them from exploding in the oil when we fry them, and also gives it a nice crust on the outside. So once we do that, we're going to go ahead and just very quickly dip it back in so all the breadcrumbs don't fall off in the liquid. And we're going to quickly plop it back in the breadcrumbs. And just give that, make sure you get the ends here too. If there's some bare spots, that's okay. Typically, it's not a problem. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and put it on a lined baking sheet just for now, because these are going to go in the freezer. Once you have all of them coated here, you're going to stick them in the freezer for at least a half an hour. More is preferred, just in case. So stick it in the flour, back in the egg. And as you can see, the egg mixture is a little slippery, it can be a little tricky, so if you need to put your finger there just to keep it from falling, go for it. And you'll just repeat this until all of your pieces are done. And this is a really easy appetizer to make if you're having people over or hosting anything. This can be really easy to make, and you can make it ahead of time too. Keep it in the freezer until you're ready to make them. But this recipe here that I'm doing, I kind of made this one up on my own, because I started frying things and it just kind of seemed like this was a good way to make fried mozzarella. So I just kind of went for it one day and it worked. So that's the recipe I use now. All right, just 2 more to go here. Now, when you're starting out learning how to fry things, I found that this was the easiest to be able to do, just because there's a lot less pressure here. It doesn't take very long to fry on either side, usually about 2 minutes per side, if that. And it's not as challenging as if you're trying to fry, you know, chicken wings or something like that. It's really simple and really easy to learn how to fry, very beginner friendly. Now, question of the day. What is your favorite way to have cheese? I love doing fried mozzarella, but I personally am a cheese fry person. I love cheese fries, specifically a certain steakhouse's cheese fries. They're my absolute favorite thing. All right, we are on our last cheese. It looks like we have just enough of our breadcrumbs here. All right, so now that our cheese is all coated and on the pan, we're gonna stick them in the freezer for minimum 20 to 30 minutes. If you can leave them in for a lot longer than that, that's preferred. You want them to be nice and hard when you put them in the fry oil, because then they're not going to explode and get all gooey and just have melted cheese everywhere. So we're gonna put these in the freezer. While those are freezing, it's a good time to make the marinara. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get that started. All right, so now when our cheese is in the freezer, we're gonna go ahead and make a really, really easy, very simple marinara sauce. So just grab any tomato sauce that you like. I have this one in the fridge, so this is what I'm using. I'm gonna pour in about a small can's worth, maybe a large can if you want a little bit extra. So we'll do a medium-sized can pour. So any tomato sauce from the store that you want. Then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna use the same seasonings that we did for our cheese. So we're gonna do the salt. And I would say just start with a 1/4 teaspoon of everything, because you can always adjust it while it's gonna be simmering on the stove. And this can simmer the whole time while your mozzarella is in the freezer. So if you saw my meatballs and marinara episode before, you'll know that my measurement is basically just an even layer of each spice along the top of whatever you're making. So a layer of salt, layer of pepper, I'm gonna do layer of oregano, and you can adjust things as usual, however you want them. Okay, layer of basil. Same with the onion powder and the garlic powder. Now typically with a marinara that I would make as a sauce or for pizza or for pasta, I would usually use like olive oil and Worcestershire sauce and things like that to make it more tangy, red pepper flakes. You can add those things if you want. I'm just doing this as a really, really basic marinara that you can just make in, 20, 30 minutes while it's simmering. So we're gonna go ahead and simmer this on the stove while our cheese is in the freezer. Once it gets time to take that out, we're gonna go ahead and heat our oil in our pan. I have canola oil heating. I like using canola oil because it's not as smoky as using olive oil. You can also use avocado oil or anything like that. I haven't used that before, so I can't say, if it's good or not. But I personally just like canola oil. So you'll heat that around medium heat, and once it starts to bubble a little bit, if you put in some breadcrumbs, that's how you know it's gonna be ready. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get this simmering, and then we're gonna come back with our cheese. All right, so our sauce is simmering here. Our oil is heating up. I can see it is starting to look a little bit bubbly on the surface here. I do have it on medium heat on this burner, and then the sauce is just simmering. So I have some mozzarella here that I already pre-made that was in the freezer. As you can see, they are hard as a rock. That's exactly how we want them because they're not gonna fall apart, they're not gonna explode. They're gonna probably cook a little bit better too and keep their shape better in the oil. So let's go ahead and test the oil here. And it's not quite ready yet. The breadcrumb itself isn't bubbling and frying, so we're gonna wait a little bit longer on that. So we're gonna go ahead and just stir this sauce up a little bit. It will bubble and it will spatter, so be careful. I'm just gonna maybe turn that off now that it's done simmering. And in the pan here, I have about a 1/4 inch of oil just covering the bottom layer of the pan. That way we get up on the sides a little bit of our mozzarella and help, fry it on all sides and just kind of secure that cheese inside the crust. So let's go ahead and see how it is now. Grab a crumb here, see how we're doing, because it seems to be bubbling a little bit more now. It's frying a little bit more. Might give it another minute though, because we don't want them to be soggy when we put them in. You want to make sure the oil is nice and hot, because if it's not hot enough, it is just going to absorb the oil and it's going to be really soggy and start falling apart. So we're going to give this another minute here, and then we're going to come back and put our cheese in. All right, so I moved our done sauce to the side, and the breadcrumbs that I put in the oil are starting to bubble more now and fry. So we are going to go ahead and start putting in our cheese. So you'll want to use tongs to put this in. You don't want to just drop it in because it can spatter. There we go. And that's what you want to happen. You want to see it start bubbling up around the cheese. And if you're using a big cast iron like this one, you can fit them all in here at once. But if you're making more than 5, I would just do it in batches. All right, and we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna give that a couple of minutes on this side, and then we'll go ahead and flip it over. All right, you guys, it's been a couple of minutes here, so I'm gonna go ahead and start flipping them over. So I have a spatula here to help me. That way it doesn't spatter if I try and flip it just with the tongs. So I'm gonna use the spatula to kind of get up underneath there. And just very carefully flip them over. You want them to be a golden brown on that first side. But you want to be careful you don't cook them for too long, they'll get a little dark. And you can see they are starting to fall apart. It is really hard to make fried mozzarella that doesn't start falling apart. But no matter what, it's still going to taste really good. So we're going to let these finish on this side here, and then we're going to see how we did. A good little tip as well, use some paper towel on a plate when you take them out of the pan. That way they can drain some of that oil and they won't be as greasy when you eat them. All right, you guys, let's see how we did here with our fried mozzarella and our easy marinara. So let's see here. First things first. Oh, yeah. Look at that cheese pull. So the low-fat mozzarella gives you this nice cheese pull here. Super, super stringy cheese. Look at that. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna cut a piece off here and we're gonna try it with our sauce. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, super cheesy, super crunchy, really nice texture, awesome flavor. These are just awesome to make for an appetizer. You can also keep a bunch in the freezer, just make them whenever you feel like. You can also bake them too. You just have to, preheat the oven to about 400 or so. I would bake them for like 10 minutes, maybe a little more time if your oven is a little bit different. But overall, these are great. We did have a couple casualties, but it happens. That's why you just make plenty of them. So as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. The recipe and the instructions are going to be in the description below. And, let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you want to see made on the channel, or if you try this yourself, and let me know how it goes. But as always, this has been Anyone Can Cook, and remember, anyone can cook.